This session will be recorded, and then the JPI Urban Europe will be able to share and send out materials after the event. So welcome to the first plenary session of the JPI Urban Europe's conference. My name's James Mawson, founder and editor-in-chief of Mawsonia and its publications. I have a great pleasure of moderating this discussion on the urban story in a globalized policy agendas world. We'll have 4 individual Q&A sessions before a joint panel debate, because in addition to the Green Deal developments, the European Commission has started to prepare European missions. Right from the beginning, already in Mariana Mazzucato's concept, an urban mission was indicated as an example of how such a mission could look like. An urban mission was suggested among the 5 proposed mission priorities. Now, about 2 years later, the mission board has submitted its report for a European mission on climate neutral cities. So to begin the conversation, begin the debate, I have the great pleasure of introducing Annalisa Boni, who's a member of the Mission Board for Climate Neutral and Smart Cities for the Secretary-General of Eurocities. So Annalisa, welcome.
Hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me.
Good. Well, thank you for being able to join. And first question I have for you is, why do you think the urban mission should be and has been taken up as one of the first missions, and why is it so urgent, Annalisa?
Well, it's definitely very, very urgent. But maybe before we say why it's urgent, maybe we can say one word about it, because we had a lot of discussions in the board about climate neutral and smart cities, but in the end we all agreed that we would define it as a mission to support, promote and showcase 100 European cities in their systemic transformation to climate neutrality by 2030, by and for the citizens. This is really important. And also to make these cities innovation hubs. So it's a mission that wants to be much more than a traditional R&D program. So that's the sort of mission that we have, let's say, developed, the idea, the concept. So why is it urgent? Well, as we put in the title, 2030, this mission needs to start now, if not yesterday. Because mitigating climate change at a global scale it's a huge challenge, we all know, and the time for the necessary societal transformation and change is very short. Cities cover about, 3% of the land on Earth, but they produce about 72% of the emissions. And on top of that, cities, when I say cities, please imagine that I mean small, medium, metropolitan areas, you know, the municipal, the definition you have as JPI put on the website of your conference. So cities are growing quickly. In Europe, it is estimated that by 2050, almost 85% of Europeans will be living there. So the climate emergency must be tackled by cities, in cities, with citizens, and very fast. And also, if we want to go fast, the city level is the closest to people. And we've seen that if citizens are on board, citizens and all the stakeholders of, at the local level, if everyone is on board, then, they can be all change agents and game changers. And I would say that also with my experience within Eurocities, it's also about keeping the momentum of many cities that having proved actually to be more ambitious than their national governments. Think of for instance, Polish countries and Polish cities or Hungarian cities and so on. And finally, maybe to say this urban mission fits perfectly with the current context of the pandemic, where cities have been the hardest hit. So it goes really with the need to review fast so many things that are part of cities, like urban regeneration, planning strategies, and so on, to follow the line of the Green Deal and the resilience and recovery facility. So that's a quick explanation of why I would go for our mission.
That's really helpful, Annalisa. So thank you for that. And I suppose when you say perhaps this should have already started yesterday if we're going to hit the 2030 goals, how is this different from previous efforts at supporting urban transition? Because presumably this isn't the first effort, it's just being packaged.
Well, yeah, as a mission itself, first of all, it's got this mission approach. So it's really like having a whole sort of society embarking into a same goal. So it is the first time that the European Union uses this approach. But I would say that in terms of new things, well, we really propose and push for a new model of city governance. And therefore there, of course, it's not, because what is really clear is that the main obstacle to climate transition is not a lack of smart technologies, that they are there, but it's more the capacity to implement them. And the present silos based form of governance, is really a governance that is designed and developed for traditional city operations and services, and so such a governance cannot drive an ambitious climate transition. So it's really about pushing for a systemic transformation with a holistic approach, long-term climate investment approach, and a city governance that really is based on, a multi-level, let's say a horizontal governance at local level with a deep and continuous collaboration between all the stakeholders, having everyone being very committed to that, but also a multi-level governance, because what you see in the previous efforts, it's really like saying, oh, cities can do it. It's cities that have the commitment, it's cities that commit, it's cities that have the responsibility, but the rest is more coming as a satellite and things like that. Now, this mission really wants to see, and that's another element of it, new element, is the city contract, the climate city contract, that's what we called it. It's really to have all levels of governance, government actually part of such a mission. So the national and regional together with the local and the European at the same time. So that we've seen that the two sort of biggest obstacles for cities to really allow this transition is at the level of the legislation and policy, and also of financing. If you put all the levels at the same table, a bit like the urban agenda approach and everything, so there you can actually take away those barriers in a way and transform them into triggers for transformation. And the other element is really about having the citizens there, having a clear role for citizens, but all in their different capacities. So as political actors, users, producers, consumers, owners of buildings, transport means, everyone. So really like having a role for that in this sort of new type of city governance is what we believe makes a difference with this mission, with the past, let's say. And maybe a new role for innovation. So really having, let's say the cities that that will sign, hopefully, the climate city contracts will develop and implement this new innovation concept that will, in a way, embrace a system innovation in governance, in transport, in energy, in construction, recycling, digital, I mean, everything. So it's really holistic. And these cities could really push for also, let's say, become innovation hubs for other cities, so that more than 100 cities can be inspired and so on. And of course, the last element, I mentioned it before, is really the financing. So again, it can be, this climate city contract can be the place where all different types of funding can be channeled, but also the financing aspects is really important, how to attract private investors and so on, but all under a same sort of umbrella. But I don't want to give too many details, otherwise I speak too much.
Well, Annalisa, we will come to you at the panel debate, but that's a perfect way to frame the importance of the mission, but also how getting that multi-level and sort of multinational, in some ways, sort of cooperation will be so vital to achieving that goal. And it's really good to hear that innovation will be so important in that. So we'll now turn to the next sort of keynote speaker to give a quick summary and a quick view. So I'll turn to Eoghan Kinirons from the Policy Officer for the European Green Deal, who's part of the Directorate-General Research and Innovation Unit C5, Ecological and Social Transition, and the European Commission. So, Eoghan, first question, how do you fit all of that onto one business card?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I'm glad you were able to fit it all in there. I should have kept it something a bit snappier, I suppose. But this is often the problem when you're talking about research and innovation. An expansive topic.
Cool. And I suppose the European Commission has taken up these global policies and translated this into a European strategy, the Green Deal, with the ambition to make Europe the first climate neutral continent, and numerous initiatives are currently starting within this. So what emphasis do you give to urban transformation to achieve the Green Deal?
Well, I think the short answer is there's a huge emphasis on it. And then obviously there's also a longer answer again. So I think the first thing is to kind of zoom out a bit and to give context to the Green Deal. As you said, the overarching goal is to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. So I think for the European Commission, when the Green Deal was adopted in December 2019, this was an historic moment for the Commission because it's for the first time looking beyond the usual policy investment electoral cycle, and you're looking to a time horizon of 2050. This is 30 years down the line. It's not the normal done thing. And I think, you know, after the formation of the European Coal and Steel Community, you have creation of the single market and the Eurozone, you know, the German reunification and peaceful reunification of the European continent in 2004. And now this Green Deal is Europe's fifth great mission in the eyes of the Commission. So it's all encompassing. And I think in order to achieve climate neutrality and simultaneously something which is extremely important, a socially fair and just transition, you know, it requires enormous transformations across society, economy, environment. So therefore, it's obvious that urban transformation is going to be hugely important in this. You know, when you have 75% or thereabouts of the European population living in cities, you can't just discount this. It's a huge number of people, and it's set to grow. That's the way the evidence is pointing. So I think for the Green Deal, we see research and innovation as an enabler of many of these transitions. And in the same way, we see urban areas and cities as an enabler, like as Annalisa said, as innovation hubs for a lot of these transitions that need to take place. So, you know, within research and innovation policy, you're going to have partnerships under Horizon Europe coming forward. You obviously have these missions, notably the city's mission, but the other missions, there's 3 more Green Deal missions on climate adaptation, on healthy oceans and waters, and on soil. And I think they also all impact on cities. You know, the aim of these missions is to produce European public goods on a grand scale. Therefore, they need the involvement of citizens to be engaged and empowered. Also, more recently, we've just adopted this European Green Deal call under Horizon 2020. So this is a 1 billion call, which we want to frame it and see it as an immediate response to both the urgent need for climate action and also an attempt to kickstart the recovery from the effects of COVID-19. And within this, there's also an area dedicated to cities. So I think, you know, to sum it up, cities, the urban transformation is going to play a crucial role in achieving the Green Deal.
That's really helpful. Thank you, and that's really clear. I'm mindful, I think, looking at the chat, a few people are finding it difficult to hear. So if there's a chance to bring your microphone a little closer to you, Eoghan, that might be helpful. But it certainly is coming across for me reasonably well in that regard. So you talk about, obviously, 75% of the population living in cities. What's your expectation towards European cities, towns, and urban areas? What would you like to see?
You know, I think the best thing is to give a few short examples, because you can say obviously there's a huge expectation, but then what does that actually mean in concrete terms? So I think one of the best ways is to look at recent initiatives that have been adopted under the Green Deal or forthcoming ones. So for instance, in December, we hope to adopt the strategy for sustainable and smart mobility. Clearly, this has a huge impact on cities. You're looking at smart mobility. You know, you've seen now with COVID-19 this uptick in cycling across cities, and the removal of cars from city centres seems to be gaining speed. And it's also linked with air pollution, which is another, you know, you've seen it more mentioned in the news since COVID-19, but it's also then you have this work stream in the Green Deal on zero pollution. I think another thing looking at this is the 2030 Climate Target Plan, which we also adopted quite recently, which sets our target for emissions reductions to at least 55%. And then this has a knock-on effect where we need to look at previous initiatives that we've had, such as CO2 standards, emission standards for cars and vans. So there's another thing linked with air pollution and mobility, where cities are clearly going to be impacted. And then you can look at an area even like biodiversity. I think when you mention it, sometimes people imagine out in the wild, nature, et cetera, but the reality is this also involves cities. You're looking at issues like tree planting, urban greening, urban sprawl. You know, just earlier this month, the Green City Accord was launched, which is a movement of European cities committed to safeguarding the environment and taking action, you know, to make cities greener, cleaner, healthier. And then an area I think I mentioned earlier was the clean energy transition. You know, in October, we adopted the initiative on the renovation wave. The aim of which is to double the rate of renovation of buildings over the next decade. You know, this can create up to 160,000 additional green jobs, but clearly a lot of these buildings are in cities. And I think there's quite a lot of emphasis in the initiative on renovating, you know, buildings such as schools, hospitals, social housing, this kind of thing. So this has an impact on a huge number of people. And then, as Annalisa said, you also have this citizen element, and I think that there's a renewed emphasis, or maybe a proper emphasis this time, on social innovation in a lot of what we're looking at. So, like we said, you have the mission where it's clearly going to involve citizens. There's also the Climate Pact going to come in early December where we involve citizens. And I think then a smaller one, but that has caught some people's eye, is this mention of the new European Bauhaus concept. So obviously this is going to be in cities, and I think, you know, it's quite eye-catching. And the aim is to match sustainability with style, which, you know, maybe it seems a bit trite, but I think it's a valid, worthy goal. And this clearly will have to involve citizens throughout the process, linking sustainability with renovation and the twin green and digital transitions.
Thanks, Eoghan. And so briefly, what do you think the planned mechanisms to strengthen evidence-based policy making will be?
Well, you know, I think one of the benefits of COVID-19 has been an acknowledgement of the importance of science and evidence-informed policy making and research. You know, you just see this week the number of people following developments in the scientific world with mention of a vaccine. And I think it's also become clear that science, knowledge, and evidence-informed policy making should form the basis for what we're doing, not crisis contingencies and short-term measures and this kind of thing. So, you know, one concrete example I can provide is what I mentioned earlier, this 2030 Climate Target Plan. If we are to reach a reduction of at least 55% greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, this clearly requires a change across a whole number of initiatives, you know, whether it's to be amended, and all of these are being looked at currently by the Commission to come into action next summer. And obviously this 55% target was not plucked out of thin air. You know, it's not an arbitrary target. And it's going to now need to look at schemes such as the emission trading scheme, effort sharing regulation, like I said, the CO2 standards, and research and innovation is contributing across the board here, you know, to set direction, address trade-offs, and ensure that there's policy coherence, because a change in one policy obviously inevitably means changing in another policy. And then again, to come back to citizens, I think that is an exciting development where citizens are being invited to provide more input when it comes to making evidence-informed policy making. You know, it cannot be all top-down, looking at numbers and blah, blah, blah. You need to bring people on board to instill confidence that these transitions are both necessary and beneficial. And a lot of this is empowering citizens to also engage in in monitoring activities, observation, etc., and to feed into policy making.
Perfect. Well, thank you for that, Owen. Again, like with Annalisa, we'll hear more from you shortly. But before we go to the next keynote, I'm going to ask the audience, as you say, it's important to hear from the bottom up as well as the top down from some of the Commission and national government. So perhaps I can ask the audience, what do you think is the most pressing urban challenge today? We'll have a little poll coming up on screen, thanks to Clara and her team. And so perhaps you can, again, go to menti.com using your phone. It's easier than trying to use the same computer. Type in the code 3126177, and then we'll be able to see some of the issues. And then when we come to the debate, we'll ask the panelists whether that was what they had expected, and also, what they think the implications are. So obviously, it looks like climate change, mobility, and air quality are starting to lead. Air quality, segregation. That's an interesting one. Okay, so while that carries on, I'll just ask delighted the next Q&A to begin. And so this will be Miguel Rodriguez Planas, who's Commissioner for the 2030 Agenda at Barcelona City Council in Spain. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you, James.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure, and sorry that so many countries are going through a second lockdown in this regard. But over the past few years, there's been an increasing emphasis on transforming our societies and systems into more sustainable ones. The Paris Agreement, the Agenda 2030, and the Sustainable Development Goals set the scene for a comprehensive effort towards sustainability. And with the SDG goal number 11, there is even an urban goal, but the urban dimension actually cross-cuts all 17 of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So, Miguel, what is your view on the role of urban transformation to achieve all the SDGs?
Well, before answering the question, I would like to move like one step behind and to remember what is the 2030 agenda on the whole. No, the 2030 agenda is the will to reach what we call the triple sustainability: the economic one, the social one, and the social one. We need to reach the three of them at the same time. That means that all the policies we implement the ones that are specified for one policy, for one dimension of sustainability, have to fulfill the other ones. This is the key element of the 2030 agenda, and maybe it's the big difference with previous global strategies. So when we move to the urban policies or urban transformation, the urban transformation is also crucial to reach the agenda, because we have to be aware that it impacts at both time to the economy, the social model, and of course into the environment. And when we talk about environment and cities, there's a like a next step that it's about the impact into health. And in terms of health, for example, in Barcelona, we know that pollution causes 33% of new cases of asthma in children and 11% of new cases of lung cancer. So we have to be really aware when we decide to design our urban city, our urban reality, when we want to transform the urban landscape in the city and in the space used by private vehicles, plays a key part in improving air quality.
Okay.
So, but if we go to the social sustainability, social equity can be enhanced thanks to an urban is more inclusive, with breaking silos between neighborhoods, making a more permeable city. And of course, here, public transport is crucial to guarantee this social equality. And in terms of the economy, of course, we have the same reality. We can create like economic districts, very silos, from make like more permeable and more present economy variety around the city. However, I will like to say that we have to be aware of one thing, and it's the pandemic, the COVID-19, and how this has impact on the SDGs. I think that it's crucial. And challenges that we see with the pandemic, the challenges related with it, like a need for a better health system, a need for a more resilient economy, the digital gap, and all these things were already in the SDGs. However, maybe the pandemic has changed the priorities between them. But if we think about the pandemic and the use of city at the urban level, we have one big reality, and it's digitalization. And digitalization is not very, very clear. We don't know what will be the future of work, but we know what kind of future of work has a future, the one that is based in talent and innovation. And
Miguel,
I would like to just finish this part by just remembering the impact of digitalization in urban reality. And for example, in the case of the retail sector had to do in some.
Miguel, yes? You're breaking up a little bit. Can you switch off your video but keep the audio? I think that might help. Just there's a little bit of latency on some of your presentations. Some of the audience is saying that they can't quite hear. So I think you had one final point to make on that first piece.
Well, I was saying that digitalization might be changing the urban transformation, because that means that some people are willing to live outside the cities, and the retail sector is moving into the digital reality, and that is something that we have to be aware.
That's very helpful. Again, it's a little bit of breakup here, Miguel, but I think you're making some really powerful points. And so what we'll do after this event is make sure that some of your sort of key points of what you're doing in Barcelona is shared to the 900 audience. But if I could ask, how do we tackle these complex challenges? Perhaps the final few minutes. Perhaps we can ask how you would tackle these challenges to achieve the ambitious goals of the urban dimension for the SDGs. Okay. Yeah, so we're getting some questions. I think it's breaking up a little bit here, Miguel. So we'll see if it hopefully improves for the Q&A. But if you have some links that you can share with the audience about what some of the projects are.
I think that some of the solutions, social silos.
Okay, Miguel, we're going to switch over at this stage to the final of the keynotes, and hopefully the signal improves for the final part. I now have the great pleasure of welcoming and introducing Tilman Buchholz, who's the Deputy Head of the Unit for the Urban Development Policy at the German Federal Ministry for the Interior, Building and Community. Welcome, Tilman.
Yeah, welcome. Good morning, James. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's really good. And I suppose beside the efforts of the European Commission to support sustainable urban development, Germany has, in preparation for its presidency of the European Council, coordinated a strategic process among member states over the last 2 years towards the signature of the updated Leipzig Charter on the 1st of December. The Leipzig Charter sets out principles and guidelines for sustainable urban development as a European policy framework. But I suppose, can you share a little bit more about the Leipzig Charter, and also what have the European member states agreed upon? What are the new elements in this charter, please?
Yeah, thank you very much that I have the opportunity here to tell a little bit more about the new Leipzig Charter, because it's indeed a top priority of the German EU Council presidency in urban development. And we are really heading towards the informal ministerial on urban development that will take place on 30th of November, actually. It will be organized back to back with a meeting, or an informal meeting of ministers for territorial cohesion, and that will take place on 1st of December. But our meeting 30th of November. And yeah, what kind of document is this, the new Leipzig Charter? The full title is the new Leipzig Charter: the transformative power of cities for the common good. So urban transformation is also rooted here, even in this title of the document. As you have already said, it's a document that has been developed in the past 2 years in the framework of this informal cooperation of member states on urban development. And will be adopted at this informal ministerial. That means this indicates that this has a very informal character of this document. It's voluntary, it's non-binding, it's not a law or a regulation. It's a strategic document, a framework for action, and we think that's the great advantage of this document, that it's had this informal character. So what are basic new elements? And new is already in the title of the document, that it's why it's built on the achievement of the Leipzig Charter of 2007, which turned out to be a guideline for integrated and participatory urban development in Europe over the last years. Many elements of this Leipzig Charter of 2007 are certainly still valid, but the world has changed dramatically, as we all know, since 2007. So the need to update this charter, refresh this charter, I think that was obvious. And the new Leipzig Charter not only takes into account the current and future global challenges, and I don't have to mention them here for this audience, but it also responds to the global and European agreements like the SDGs that Michael just pointed out, but also the Green Deal as a top European political priority is mentioned in the Charter. And also other agreements. The new Leipzig Charter so provides a kind of policy framework to envision these global agreements at the urban scale. So that's the idea behind the Charter. And what is really new in this Charter is a focus on the common good, as we call it. That's a kind of red thread through the whole document. Key aspects in this regard are strengthening the cohesion of our urban societies, including the most vulnerable parts of our societies. Urban policy for the common good means that to act in the interest of all and to balance public and private interests, also with market mechanisms, to safeguard accessibility and affordability of services and infrastructure for all, and also to empower urban stakeholders to implement urban policies for the common good. And we think that especially now the COVID crisis demonstrates the relevance of this focus on the common good. And The new Leipzig Charter proposes 3 different spatial levels of the European city, as it called it, where action has to be taken. It's a neighborhood level, especially the deprived neighborhoods. It's a city as a whole, or the local authority in their specific national context, and the functional area. That means the regional and metropolitan contexts. And this is also a new element of the new Leipzig Charter. Another really, what we think, innovative element of the Charter is that it does not stop at listing principles and describing visions, but it also addresses the question, what do cities need to being capable to answer current and future challenges and deal with these challenges, and empowering cities to transform. That is the headline here. So the Charter says support from European, national, and regional level is necessary to find local solutions to global challenges. And urban governance, to ensure the common good, needs, for instance, legal framework conditions, funding programs, or stable financial basis for the cities, skilled employees, another important factor, and also steerability of the infrastructure of public services, public welfare. That means that cities should be at the steering wheel, and not big corporate players, for instance. And then the new Leipzig Charter advises to establish national urban policies, and also to strengthen coherent European EU or EU regulation and funding instruments, and that then is a link to the urban agenda for the EU as well, that Annalisa has already mentioned. And there's an additional document that will also be adopted in Leipzig, and that refers then to the urban agenda. But these are basically some crucial new elements in this document that will be hopefully adopted very soon.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you, Tom. And where do you see the biggest need for action to realize the Leipzig Charter?
Yeah, I think the biggest need for action for sure is to strengthen the position of cities. I think that's the most important. In the end, it's always the city where things come together, and it's the cities that are closest to the citizens, and therefore I think strengthening the urban governance to assure the common good, strengthening